Well, welcome to Shawnee Civic Center, and I see some, I was going to say, I see some old faces here. Yeah. That might be an understatement. But yeah, I do. I see some faces here that I went to school with, and this is really kind of neat. And then I see some neighbors in here, and then I see some former students in here. In fact, one of the students I'm going to introduce is David Knight, and I've introduced him before, but I want to do so primarily because I'm going to turn the front part of this session over to him for about a few minutes, and I want David to explain to you what he actually does. But I will tell you that he's a videographer basically for probably 2 or 3 national organizations on the murder of John F. Kennedy, and he's been with these organizations for 8 to 10 years, somewhere right around there. But at the same time, one of my former students, and he's videotaping this, and people have asked about DVDs and about the program, and he'll have those available in the next session for any of you guys, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that. What is kind of unique about what he does is, and I'm very proud of this, but I know Tony right here probably does a little bit of this too, but he'll show the screen behind us, and then he'll show the speaker. So you'll be able to see the speaker over here, and then the screen here as the speaker is talking about the screen. And it's a little bit easier to do with the lights on. Okay? So with that to do, I'm going to turn it over to David right now and let him tell you who he is and what he's doing. And I also want to let you know that he is doing some pretty good research right now on a topic that several of us have talked about, and that is about the weapons that may have been used in the murder of John F. Kennedy. Not necessarily the 6.5 millimeter Carcano, which is the historic weapon, but then again, it's really not the historic weapon. So, and we haven't even got into that yet. This is our 3rd session, and we haven't even invented Dealey Plaza yet. So, again, thank you guys for coming. So, David, would you have the floor, right?
Sure, sir. Thanks, Casey. Well, as Casey said, I was one of his students back in the late 80s, early 90s, and he got me into it by walking across the stage and throwing my history book in the trash can and saying, hey, I'm not teaching from this today, I'm going to tell you what the truth is. So, 29 years later, I can thank him for all the books, videos, and my time that I spend on the topic, and hey, I'm grateful for it. So, I can't see my wife is, but what the hell. Basically, I've got a few things for sale, and they help support me, plus also Project JFK CSI Dallas. I'll just go over real quick, and then I got something new that I haven't brought out yet, but it would save a lot of money if everybody wanted to buy the entire set. And I'll talk to you about that here in just a sec. The first one is the True Series. It is 15 hours long. It started getting filmed in 1991. This one ended around 2014, and there's about 15 to 20 different eyewitnesses, lecturers, authors, researchers. These usually go for 20 at the conference. There are 25 online. The other one is the In the Eye of History, the Gathering Director's Cut. It's 9 hours long. Both of these are on Blu-ray. This actually has Dennis David, James Seibert, Gerald Custer, Paul O'Connor, James C. Jenkins. Well, who are they? These guys are the ones that actually were there at Bethesda Naval Hospital and was there during the autopsy of President Kennedy. The only one that's still alive is Jim Jenkins. The rest of them are gone. This was filmed in 1998 and 2002, and it's set on a shelf for about 13 years. Well, I got a hold of the footage and I said, why hasn't this stuff come out yet? Well, it needed to be cleaned up, edited, audio needed to be fixed. I spent about a year worth of time on it, got it brought out, and then also William Law, that brought out the book In the Eye of History, did a 2nd edition, and I did the 90-minute DVD for the book as well. So if you buy the book, one of my DVDs is in that. So not to pat myself on the back too hard to break my hand, but I'm pretty proud of that. The other 2 things are what Casey does here in Shawnee, the Project JFK Grave Injustice, which was the first lecture that he did. So for those that missed out on that, you could actually buy the DVD, and he comes right in your living room and invades your mind for 3 hours. The next one is 2 hours long, the Guardians of the Republic, which was filmed February 7th, so about a month ago. This was 2 hours. These are both DVDs. And then I put together something to help out you guys. We spent a lot of money on books and research materials. I combed the internet to find digital PDF and ebooks. I wouldn't say that I pirated them because they're out there for anybody to get a hold of, but what I've done is actually made it easier by putting 75, 80 books on 2 CDs. You can actually take these, load them on your computer, transfer it to a tablet, a cell phone, your computer screen, and read the books that we've read for years and get research off of. These are $10. Now, the new thing that I told you guys about is a digital thumb drive. This has everything that's on here, minus the books, but the 4 films are on one flash drive. So you get about 24, 25 hours on one thumb drive. If you bought all these together as a pack in this form, you'd be spending about $85. If you buy one of these, because they're easier to make and they're less cost effective, they're more cost effective for me to make, I'm selling these for $35. So you're getting about a $40 cut on them. So if you guys are interested in it, just meet me back there at the table and I'll get you guys hooked up. So other than that, thank you, Casey.
You got it, Dave. Thank you. You know, I've been doing this thing for, well, 54 years now, going on 55, and it amazes me that I've stuck with that long, because I've got 2 wives, so you guys, not at the same time. And I've stuck with one for 15 years and the other one for now, probably about going on 25 to 30 years. And it's one thing to be married to somebody, but my wife kept saying, this wife kept asking me, especially on the 50th anniversary, she said, so is it over? I said, well, 50 may be over for you, but I said, the archives are just starting to open up the material. And so the material that we've been talking about for years is now coming available to us. And as researchers, we go through this material. And it's an awesome thing to go through the material because part of it you can't read. The other part, another section of it is redacted. It's blacked out, it's white out, and it's one of those things you sit back and say, how do you get any information at all? And it amazes me as an American history teacher for all these well over 40 years is that we believe in democracy, we believe in a democratic republic, but we sure as hell don't practice it at the federal level. We don't. We lock things up for years. And then I remember Earl Warren basically says, he says, you guys will never know in your lifetime what actually took place on November 22nd, 1963. He says, we're going to lock this thing up for at least 75 years. And 75 years was the point at which most males died after about 75 years. And I think now, men, we've gotten a little bit further on that. We're about 81. And if you want to know who the strongest sex is, it's females. They're about 88, almost 83. And we've extended life a little longer on the average. So what is going on now is that these files that are now coming open are now becoming available for us to go through. And some of these files are, like I said, they're ridiculous. But at the same time, we get pointed in the right direction and we start looking at these files, and that's what we've been doing for probably about, at least probably since the end of the Warren Commission. And under the Freedom of Information Act, we've had access to a lot of these files, but a lot of the files, to me, it's like you get a chance to buy stock, okay? And most of us don't have the money to buy the stock, but they sell us the penny stock. I want the real stock. I want the 10% or the 15%. Well, most of us won't have access to that. I think that's what's going on with this. We get a little bit every year, And it's the carrot, and they keep drawing the carrot back to us. And I just sit back and I said, you know, this is crazy stuff. But everybody wants to know, can you document what you say? Well, can the federal government document what they say? And how would you know? Wow, crazy stuff. I intend to probably read until the day I die. And last night I was trying to get some sleep. I couldn't sleep. About 3 o'clock I got up and then went to bed at 7 because I started reading a section of a book which kicked me back into the internet, which then I found a guy that I'd been looking for 30 years. And this is a very important person. But if I tell you the guy's name, I don't think very many of you will know who he is. His name's PFC Dinkin, United States Army cryptographer. I've been looking for him for the past 30 to 35 years. I got on some dark internet somewhere out there, and I'm going, what is this? So for the next 3 hours, I'm downloading this material and reading it, highlighting it, and I'm saying, good God, this guy's a very important person. In fact, he probably should be put up as a hero because he intercepted material in the United States military at least a month and a half before the murder of President Kennedy, and he deciphered this thing out, and he looked at it and he says, there's a military group inside NATO, inside the United States government, inside the Pentagon, that are going to take out the president in November in Dallas, and they're going to blame either a black man or a Cuban. He had this a month and a half before the murder of JFK. Now, I've known about this for about 35 years. I can go out there and talk about a guy that I don't even know where he is. Okay. I'm going to bring this out in probably my next couple of lectures, but these are the people that they're never out there for the national news media, but if anybody had access to the cryptographic material, he did. And he didn't know who to turn it over to because his bosses are the United States military. So he decided to use another name and then send material to Robert Kennedy to let him know that his brother was going to be assassinated sometime in Dallas. In fact, the date that he gave was November 28th. Yeah. So he's wrong. Well, that's exactly how the Warren Commission operated. If you were off, if you didn't see Oswald up on the 6th floor and you saw somebody on the 5th floor and you said it was the 5th floor, they threw it out because everything has to be on the 6th floor. And I'm sitting there going, God, I said, who's doing this investigation? You look at all the floors. You look at everything. Okay? And I know a lot of us just want answers. I can't give you all those answers, but after 55 years, yeah, we're going to give you some answers. But the speculation is still out there because we're trying to figure out who do we want to believe, who do we believe, what do we base material on, and after if there's of course my wife asked me, she goes, would you like to explain what fake news is? Yeah, I can tell you what fake news. The Warren Report, the Warren Commission, that's fake news. Okay? And the men, mostly men, there were some women there, but it was mostly men. These guys, they lied. They lied to us. At least for right now, going on 55 years. What for? Because they're hiding something. And after all these years, we're starting to find out what that hidden stuff is. All right. Tonight's program is about the book that my colleague, Brian Edwards, and I put together. And I want to introduce Brian because Brian hasn't been here. He's a person that goes out and he surveils people, okay, for a large company. But I want to tell you a little bit of background. Brian Edwards has been researching the JFK assassination for over 40 years and has accumulated and read over 300 books on the case. He has interviewed over 50 of the Dealey Plaza witnesses, Dallas police officers, and detectives who were directly involved in the investigation of President Kennedy's assassination and the murder of Officer J.D. Tippit. In addition, He has interviewed 10 of the doctors and medical personnel who were inside trauma room number 1 at Parkland Hospital. He has also interviewed many of the Navy corpsmen who were on duty at Bethesda Naval Medical Center, November 22nd, 1963. And let me just jump in here real quick. Brian and I are both going to Washington, D.C. We're presenters representing the great state of Kansas, because a lot of people don't know that Kansas even exists when you go back to Washington, D.C. And maybe I'd bring Toto and Dorothy with us. But at the same time, yeah. But at the same time, we're going to go there, and we're two of the main presenters. And David said that Jim Jenkins is the only medical person still alive. Well, Jim is going to be there, so we're definitely going to talk to Jim Jenkins. But again, with Brian has given hundreds of presentations on the assassination throughout the United States. And since 2001, has been a regular presenter at the JFK Lancer Conference in Dallas. On November 17, 2017, Mr. Edwards was called to testimony as an expert witness in the state of Texas versus Lee Harvey Oswald. It was an Oswald mock trial at the South Texas College of Law in Houston, Texas. And I do believe the videotapes of that are not out yet. Okay. He holds a master's degree in criminal justice from Washburn University, and from 1994 to 2001 served as an adjunct instructor with the Criminal Justice Department at Washburn University. Mr. Edwards served as a police officer with the Lawrence, Kansas Police Department, and was assigned to the Department Crime Section search team as a crime scene photographer, and an instructor in the police academy, firearms instructor, field training officer, and one of the department's self-defense instructors. From 1983 to 1990, Mr. Edwards served on the department's counter-assault team. His original research on the Zapruder film has been cited in several books: The Assassination Science in 1998, Murder in Dealey Plaza 2000, The Zapruder Film 2003, and The Hoax of the Century 2004. He was a frequent contributor to many JFK assassination-related publications, including the Dealey Plaza Echo, The Fourth Decade, and the JFK Chronicles. And if you're not aware of what those are, get online, okay? And I know a lot of you have access to get online. He is the co-author of the book, Beyond the Fence Line, and is currently working second book entitled Lancer is Down. Okay? This is the book that Brian and I spent probably 16 to 18 months putting out. Okay? And we put it out in a little bit larger form. I think last week I mentioned to you, or about 2 weeks ago I mentioned to you, we put it out in a little larger print, and that is for us older people, but it's a little bit easier to read, and you can outline it however you want to do it. Plus that, we did it for high school kids. We actually, if we were to put this entire book out with all the pictures in here, it'd probably cost us $60 a book. Okay, but at the same time, most of it is in black and white. Again, he's working on a second book, Lancer's Down, a tactical analysis of the ambush in Dealey Plaza. In November 2017, he testified as an expert witness for the defense mock trial of Lee Harvey Oswald at the North Texas School of Law in Houston. So guys, it's a real pleasure for me, and I think it's a real pleasure for you, as you will soon find out. I'm the political science end of the duel that when we go out to teach. He is the working police officer that comes into and puts everything together in a crime scene area. So you can imagine when we were teaching at Washburn University, we would go back and forth. We had nobody that ever slept in our class, and we taught 8 hours a day for 1 solid week. And wherever he left off, I came in. When I left off, he came in. So without further ado, please welcome Brian Edwards.
First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. I know you all have busy lives. Appreciate you coming in. I think you will enjoy our presentation. Thank you, Casey, for inviting me and also for putting this together. I think it's important that I think it's important for all of us as Americans to know as much information as we can about this case. Last time I was here, I just briefly told you that I was 7 years old at the time at Oral Park Elementary School, and my teacher, Mrs. Frank, we were in class, and she said that the intercom came on and the principal said that President Kennedy had been shot. Not that he was dead, it was just that that time it was 1 o'clock, and that's all the information we had. And I remember her crying. And they let us out of school. I went home. My mom was ironing a shirt for my dad, and she was crying. I didn't know why. Went out and played. But on Sunday, we were watching the funeral procession, and I was just fascinated by the reverse boots on blackjack. I remember the horse's name. When we were watching the funeral procession in D.C., the picture changed. I didn't change it. We didn't have remotes back then. And they showed it was just a garage, or it looks like in somebody's house or something. And the commentator could be heard off camera say, "Here he comes." And Lee Oswald is, I don't know who he is, and I'm watching, I'm waiting, get back to the horse, I want to see the horse. And the guy says, "He's been shot." I remember my dad saying, just letting it out there, because, well, there's something wrong with that, because now we'll never know what happened. I think in my little brain, in my little 7-year-old brain, something clicked that said, there is something wrong with that. There's still something wrong with that 54 years later. I spent the last 2 or 3 days, I'm supposed to be watching for a person doing a workman's comp violation, and I was bored, so I decided to put this little one-page thing that I wanted to share with you. I think it's appropriate, and I'm just going to read it to you. The assassination of President Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 should have been investigated like any other murder in the city of Dallas. There was no federal law requiring the federal government to intervene in the case, and putting aside the political implications of the president's death of its own, the crime should have been investigated as any other shooting crime. You don't have to be an expert in criminal investigations or have a working knowledge in forensic science or have a medical license to realize there are numerous problems with this case. There are multiple mistakes were made at the beginning of the case on the part of the Dallas police, the FBI, and the Secret Service. Physical evidence in the case was mishandled, compromised, tampered with, misrepresented, fabricated, and destroyed. Material witnesses were ignored, threatened, and even killed because of what they had seen. The most important break in the chain of evidence began when the Secret Service forcibly, at gunpoint, removed President Kennedy's corpse from the state of Texas, violating not only the city of Dallas laws, but the state of Texas laws. They had no jurisdiction. They took the best evidence away from those who were going to investigate. Secondly, the government's selection of the individuals ordered, and I have that in quotes, ordered to conduct the post-mortem examination of the president, had never investigated a death by a gunshot wound in their lives. They were personnel directors and paper pushers. They were not medically trained to investigate a homicide. But yet the government took it upon themselves to say, you 3 doctors are going to do the autopsy of the century. Anybody with an intelligence in their brain would say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Casey and I always wonder, what is it that remains in the minds of basically intelligent, otherwise reasonably educated people who continue to believe the government's version of the events that took place over that historic weekend and ended the life of our president? But that's okay. That's okay. We don't think that they're stupid, that they're bad, or they're ignorant, but we continue to wonder what makes 10% of the American people continue to support the Warren Commission's version. What makes them so hesitant to join the ranks of the other 90% of us who have an ounce of intelligence? There are some defenders of the government's account who literally hate, I love it, literally hate anyone who says otherwise. There have been times when Casey and I have given lectures and people would come up to us and say, "You're anti-American." I am not anti-American. I am an American. I was born here. I support my government, but if they lie to me, I have to raise an issue. And we're allowed to do that. We know the basic facts of the case simply do not make sense, and we know that even though thousands of files have been released, there are still thousands of documents that will never see the light of day in our lifetime. We know critical evidence was destroyed. We know our elected officials lied to the American people. And I can tell you from experience that I will bet you everything that I own against a cup of coffee that if somebody is killed in Johnson County and the case was bungled as badly as it was for the President of the United States, I guarantee you somebody in that family would say, "I want to see the results. I want you to open this case up again because you screwed it up." Why hasn't the American people, why haven't we as a group of 90% of us who believe that there was a conspiracy say to the government, "You lied to us," but they don't care that we know. That's the sad part. To those 10% who continue to support the lone gunman theory and believe the Dallas police, the FBI, the Secret Service, and the CIA had some role in the assassination are simply out of touch with reality. There are two versions of how the government deals with the public. One,
and I believe my eyes. Why have you come back?
Please, sir, we've done what you told us. We've brought you the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. We melted her.
Ah, you liquidated.
that's the government right there. That's what they want us to see, is only what they show us.
Keep your promise to us. Please, sir.
Not so fast. Not so fast. I have to give the matter a little thought. Go away and come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, but I want to go home now.
You've had plenty of time already. Yeah. Do not arouse the wrath of the great and powerful odds. I said come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you'll keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great odds?
And that's what goes on behind the scenes.
Think
Right there.
yourself lucky
Two
that I'm giving you
different
an audience
versions.
tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
That is an analogy that I think L. Frank Baum originally designed the story of the Wizard of Oz to be about America and how there's diverse cultures in our own country, and how there's different versions of each one of those characters, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, they all represented something. And there's a whole series of internet sites that you can get on and go, what does the Wizard of Oz all relate to? And you could spend all day doing that. What we want to do tonight is, it's a two-part lecture. One is called Love Field to Love Field. We're going to take you through from the moment President Kennedy arrived in Dallas until he left. He came in walking, and they carried him out 2.5 hours later. Then part 2 will be about the Ed Hoffman story. So to lay the groundwork for how Ed fits into this puzzle, we're going to take you back and show you in specific steps how the president went from that at 11:40 to that at 2:30. All right. So what we're going to do is I want you all to think like a criminal investigator. I know you're not trained, but think of it in a logical process. If you're going to put this puzzle back together, you got to figure out, well, how was the person killed? Were they walking? Were they standing? Were they running? Were they sitting? What happened? How did they get shot? Where were the shots coming from? And what happened after the shots were fired? So, at 11:40 on the 22nd of November, on a Friday afternoon, everybody in Dallas reads the paper and sees that President Kennedy is coming to their town. A lot of people took the day off. A lot of people were letting their kids out, didn't send their kids to school. And Love Field, which is still in operation today, President Kennedy's Air Force One lands. And there's a pointer on here, David?
Yeah, top.
Got it. President Kennedy, Mrs. Kennedy, Mrs. Connolly, the governor of the state of Texas, Governor Connolly, Mr. They arrive and they're going to do a meet and greet on their way to the cars. And President Kennedy here, Mrs. Kennedy, Mrs. Johnson, the new president in 2.5 hours. That's a great shot. That's Life magazine. Great shot. Another good picture. There is the mobile crime scene. That's a crime scene. That car had victims in it, had bullet holes, it had bone fragment, it had flesh, it had blood, it was a mobile crime scene. This is what it looked like before it got all messed up. And the car, oopsie, sorry. This car is the Secret Service car. It's a Cadillac. This is a Lincoln. I'm going to say that again. That's a Lincoln. That's a Cadillac. Two different manufacturers, right? So far, I tell you that because when the government tried to put it back together, so to speak, put the case back together, the president's car had been destroyed. And so what they used to stand in for the president's car when the shooting took place was that car. Well, your data is going to be messed up because it's not the right car. It's a totally different car, it's different length, it's different width, and it doesn't even look like the same kind of car.
How did the Lincoln get torn up?
It was taken back to Love Field and put on a C-130 transport, and 3 Secret Service agents rode with it to Washington, D.C. at Andrews Air Force Base, drove it to the White House Secret Service garage, and left it there for 2.5 days. And then at some point, people were coming in and out, taking pictures, collecting evidence. We don't know who they were. No logs were kept, no accurate logs were kept of who went and came and looked at that car. And then Lyndon Johnson decided that it was such a bad memory that he told the Secret Service Director, James Rowley, get rid of that car. I don't want to see it again. And they took it, they flew it to Eisenhart in Dearborn, Michigan, a Carriage Works company, and they rebuilt it. They scrapped it, started at the wheelbase, and worked their way up again.
Little sidebar right here. The vehicle itself, a lot of people said, well, is this vehicle, is it bulletproof?
No.
The only thing that's bulletproof on there are the tires. Everything else is not bulletproof.
The plexiglass shields like were in the jets at that time? or-
They were just plexiglass. That's
Yeah,
all it
just
was.
plexiglass, and they were
For
folded
weather-
up in the
for a
back
weather cover.
trunk.
That's all it was. So it rained that morning. As you can see, some of the folks had raincoats on. It rained that morning. It just happened to stop, the rain stopped, just as President Kennedy's airplane came to wheel stop, and they took the top off. Well, when you do an investigation, you wonder, well, who took the top off? The top was on the car until the rain stopped, and then somebody made a decision to take the top off. Who had the authority to tell somebody that had control of that car to take that top off? We'll come back to that. You do know that the Secret Service's primary task is not law enforcement. It's to protect our currency and our heads of state. That's it. They're not law enforcement officers. They don't make arrests. They investigate currency violations and protect heads of state. They are not criminal investigators. After several minutes of the President and Mrs. Kennedy shaking hands with all the people that were, not all the people, but the people who were waiting, they got their way over to the limousine. This is a 1961 Lincoln Continental stretch limo, specifically designed to carry the President, designed for the President, designed by the Secret Service, and maintained and paid for $500 a year to the Ford Motor Company for leasing. That car is evidence. Forever, it will be evidence. I went to Dearborn, Michigan last year for a training session, and I had to go to Dearborn to see I wanted to see the car. Well, I knew that wasn't the car in the Henry Ford Museum, but I laughed and just laughed and watched these people. Hey, look, Johnny, that's President Kennedy's car. Look, take my picture. No, it's not. I didn't want to say that. I would have been thrown out of there, but I did see the replica. That was close enough. Anyway, so there's Connolly. Governor Connolly is getting out of the way. Governor Connolly is sitting, and Mrs. Connolly to his left. They're sitting on these little jump seats. They fold down like bench, like little bleacher seats. And the President and Mrs. Kennedy, we're going to get in the back. Connolly is on the right side. The President's on the right side. Mrs. Connolly's on the left. Mrs. Kennedy will be on the left. They leave at 11:55 from the airport. They're going to the Trade Mart. It's about a 25-minute trip. And they're going to go through crowds of people. It's going to take a little longer than 25 minutes. And they're about ready to leave. I love the happy smile, go kind of looky. You're a happy guy, happy to do your job. This guy is the driver. His name is William Greer, 62 years old, 5 years past mandatory retirement in the federal system. He should have been retired. All he does is drive the car. That's it. The President's main guy to drive his car died of a heart attack at Camp David 9 days before the trip to Dallas. The odds are probably pretty small that would happen again, but it did. This is Roy Kellerman, Secret Service agent, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky himself, and then the governor, Mrs. Connolly here, Mrs. Kennedy, the president. Follow-up car with Secret Service agents. There are 9 people in that car. 7 of them are Secret Service agents. 2 of them are not. 2 of them are, one's Dave Powers, the president's one of his special assistants, and another one is somebody else, not a Secret Service agent. All right, so we're on over. This guy here, Clint Hill. Casey and I talked to him 2 or 3 times. He's about as smart as that. And I say that with due respect because he's a Secret Service agent. He was on the White House detail of the president. He's a nice guy, but he's not too sharp in the head. And he is Mrs. Kennedy's primary body agent. She gets in trouble. He's the first one there. And this is the first trip that Mrs. Kennedy has come out of the White House because she had those of you know, she had a miscarriage, and the president said, you need to get out and get some air. Let's go to Dallas. So she said, well, if I go, Clint's going with me. Okay, good. Well, we don't care. Just whoever you got to bring your team, bring your team. Anyway, this is Agent primary body guy. He is the man who would put his life in front of a bullet if something would happen to the president. I tell you that because he gets left at the airport. He is supposed to be, as the cars pull out, he's supposed to get on the running board of the follow-up car and be on the running board outside the car on the same side as the president in case something happens. He got left at the airport. Now,
Left,
what's
the
that?
president's primary.
Yes, sir. He was left at the body. He's left at the airport.
I realize none of these guys are gonna be too smart, because you sign up for this job, my job is to step in front of a bull.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get you
For
for
$2,000 a year.
Yeah.
$2,000 a year, and they're traveling 300 days a year.
Yeah.
But this is an important photograph because it shows two things. One, it shows the limousine and its configuration of who's sitting where, but in the right portion of the windshield on the inside is the little sticker that says number 7. Every car at the airport were lined up like a bunch of elephants in a circus, and every car had a number. So that whoever, like, you know, the mayor of Dallas would have number 14, he'd have the keys to number 14 rental car, and he'd go down until he gets to number 14, okay, this is the car we're gonna have. The president's car, as you can see, has the number 7 designator, which meant it would have been 6 cars in front of him. No, didn't happen that way. He's the first car in the line. Now, who had the authority and power and the gumption or the balls to say, hey, you know, don't be number 7, we're going to move you up. Okay. Remember,
No events, but
this guy is not the brightest cookie that'll ever come out of the Gerber cookie factory. He's not bright. In fact, he had an 8th grade education. How he got on the Secret Service, couldn't tell you. But there's a problem with this right now because it's in front of everybody and there's nobody to be a buffer, as it were. So they're out in the middle of nowhere. Here's a good color picture. 2 things I want you to look at. One is the limousine, and can you tell me how fast the car's going? Not going real fast. Secret Service protocol is any motorcade in a city environment, if the roads are clear, which should have been by the Dallas police, cleared that place out so you could go down the road, get to your point from A to point B, and quickly not get stopped by, you know, traffic lights or whatever. But that car is moving real fast. And I want you to look at the 2 officers, these are Dallas PD motorcycle officers. They were riding behind the vehicle, behind the bumper of the car, and there's 2 more on this side. At the airport, before they left Love Field, they were told by somebody, either Secret Service or somebody in the political arena of the Dallas people, and said, oh, sorry, we changed things, you're going to pull back now. And one of the officers, in fact, it was a sergeant, who said, well, that's not the way we train. We have a diamond formation. That's the way our guys are going to be, like a plow. We get out, you know, get people out of the way. No, we don't want, the president doesn't want you up in the front of the car because of the smoke and the exhaust and all that. You guys ride back behind the bumper of the car. And in no circumstances, no matter what happens, you do not go past that rear wheel. What? Now, who's putting that together? Somebody is making, they're basically removing the protection. So who's doing that? Who has the authority to do that? Well, my vote is the Secret Service, because none of them liked him, even though they worked for him as the president. They didn't like him because of his, whatever, they just didn't like the guy. So we had 2 officers on the left and 2 officers on the right rear. And you can see in this photograph there are handles on the back of the car specifically designed for agents to stand on the bumper of the car with there's, you know, like a board, like on a ski boat, and you can hold on to the rail and ride on the car. That basically keeps somebody from behind seeing the occupants of the car. And you look on any website and you just type in JFK motorcade, except Dallas, You'll see agents on the back of the car when the president was in Berlin, Portugal, 4 or 5 other places, Ireland. There are agents standing on the back of the car. In Dallas, nobody was on the back of the car. The motorcycle officers were told to pull back. So and he's in an open car. He's a sitting duck. Hell, I could hit him from here with a box of books if I had to. So, here's another picture. Notice how close the Secret Service car is. These 2 guys, there's Clint Hill, and this guy, I got names in my head, I can tell you who they are, but I don't need to tell you. These 2 guys protect Mrs. Kennedy because they're on the same side. If something happens, they're right there. 3 steps, they're in the car. These guys protect the president, you know, with me, same side. Something happens, they don't have to go around through the car and go around the other side. Again, the flags are not moving a lot, so they're not moving a whole lot of speed here. Now we're picking up a little bit of speed. Now you can see the officers here and the officer here. There's another one on this left side. At some point, 3 times in the motorcade, from the time they left Love Field until they got to Dealey Plaza, Clint Hill, seen here, is on the back of the car. The question would be, what made Clint Hill get off of the follow-up car and get on the president's car? Well, did somebody get close to Jackie? Because the guys that are protecting the president, they got lead in their shoes, they're not moving. Why is he the only one getting over there? I don't know. But we know 3 times he did that. We have pictures of it. Now, I'm sure Jackie Kennedy was a nice woman. I mean, she's the president's wife, but she doesn't hold the nuclear codes in her head and could control military operations. They were more protective of her than they were of him. It makes no sense to do that. Who would make that decision? These guys. Hello? That's a person. Why would the Dallas police have had their 1,200-man department on the roof of every building between Love Field and Dealey Plaza? They weren't.
You mean that's not a policeman?
No. No. We don't have any idea who it is, but somebody's not concerned about it. And there's people on, look at that. There are people on the fire escape. That's great. And he's in an open limousine. Give me a break. When Hillary Clinton came to Lawrence, Kansas, America in when did she come? 90, when did she get to White House?
93, somewhere
93.
in 84.
When she came to Lawrence, Kansas, America, counter assault team got the call. Highway Patrol, KUPD, Douglas County Sheriff, Overland Park PD, Lenexa PD, Johnson County Sheriff. Everybody who had a badge and a gun was on duty that day in Lawrence, Kansas, from the time that lady landed at the airport until she got to the University of Kansas, and then when she left the University of Kansas until she got back to the airport. I was on top of the City Hall with a Secret Service agent with a radio, making sure that nobody gets on the street between her and the airport. It was locked down. Where do you see some of the pictures of this? You scratch your head. You go, what the? What are they thinking? We're on Main Street. Look how close those people are. They had to he opened the door several times to keep people back. Can you see him? No, I can't see nothing. There's Clint Hill on the back of the car again. There he is again on the back of the car.
You talked to him, Brian, did you ask him?
Oh, yeah. You got to remember, David, he's still getting a pension, and he's going to still say the same thing. However, Casey and I went to Dallas. He's 70, 80 years old, and he's got a new girlfriend. And he wrote a book with her, all about his time in the White House, all about protecting the president, all about the time he spent with Jackie, and the girl, and the boy. Wonderful law story. Great. I don't care about that. Tell me about what you saw on the back of the car when you rode on the top of it for 4 miles to see till you get to Parkland Hospital. Casey and I drove all night to get to the 6th Floor Museum to get a seat to listen to this guy talk and tell his story. We thought maybe he's going to tell the truth. We all know what the story is. It's like you've seen The Wizard of Oz. You know how it's going to end. But I want to see if you're going to tell me the story. So he gets up and he tells a story. Behind us is a good friend of ours, Dr. Robert McClellan, who actually had his hands on President Kennedy, Lee Oswald,
Zapruder.
and Zapruder.
And Abraham Zapruder.
Dr. McClellan, I'll show you the picture in just a minute. Dr. McClellan, along with all the other doctors in Parkland Hospital, said the president, when he came in, you take your fist, and you put it right there, and it blew out this way. That's where the hole was. It was the size of a small orange. It was an exploded exit wound. These guys know what the hell they're talking about. They're doctors in Dallas. They've probably seen a few gunshot wounds. Clint Hill gets up there and he says, McClellan's sitting behind us, Casey's looking at him, I'm looking at Hill, going, okay, what's the reaction going to be? Agent Hill, tell us what we didn't ask, but the moderator said, Agent Hill, would you tell us what you saw when you got to the car? Back of the head was gone, I could see blood and brain all over the back of the car. Thank you! But yet his Warren Commission testimony, he said the hole was up here. On C-SPAN, he said the hole was up here. On a book tour, he said the hole was up here. He's lying. Why? Because he's still getting a government pension. I think I would too if I was worried about my family and better tell the truth. But Dr. McClellan, we turned around and he goes, thank you for telling the truth. But after that, he wavered and said he didn't see that. All right, so the door's open and people are all over the place. There's not a cop anywhere around except these guys on the motorcycle. And he said, the motorcycle officers that we talked to said people were hitting their handlebars. That's how close they were. Look at all those people. First of all, you're not going to see anything. Second of all, if something happens, how are you going to get to them? They let the city bus go. Can you imagine?
Right by the motorcade.
Can you imagine going to work and go, hey Martha, look, there's the president going by. Hey John, what's happening? That's how they secure. And I wrote this on there. Every precaution was taken to ensure President Kennedy's safe movement through the downtown areas. Really? Really? What downtown are you talking about? Fort Worth? Yeah, I bet it was nice in Fort Worth. I can't believe that. Now, the question would be, would that ever happen today? First of all, they traveled at 50 miles an hour on a residential street. You're not going to get close to that car. But no, that wouldn't happen. Look how close these ladies are. Take 2 more steps, you're going to get run over by a 1,500-pound motorcycle. How are they going to look happy? The press that it was assigned, not only the White House press corps, but the local Dallas Morning News, the local television stations, all the press photographers were at the back of the line. Every motorcade that President Kennedy drove in or rode in, there's always a flatbed truck in front of the car for historic purposes, recording in film and motion, or in still photography and motion picture. Not in Dallas. They're way back here. They're not going to see a damn thing. When they get into Dealey Plaza, the shit was over with. Can you imagine what we would have had if those guys would have been in the position that they should have been in?
In fact, I think their car number was number 9 and
Yeah.
10. And the president's car was number 7. But number 7 is moved all the way to the front.
And theirs is
And
still
they're
back.
left it behind. Yeah.
Here's Clint. Here's agents on the motorcade. So they're up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 or 5 cars. This is the first news guy. But they're not going to see anything. Now they enter Dealey Plaza. And this is my treat for you. Okay. For 54 years, we have had static pictures, just like that. And it's one-dimensional. it's just kind of cool. I mean, you can really see how it's out, you know, it's all laid out and everything. And the motorcade would come down here and make the turn and go down here and go underneath the underpass. In '63, that's the best pictures we would get. In 1990, whenever Google Earth came out, oh my gosh, that was just like opening the Pandora's box. We can see everything. Well, in 2018, we have new technology. And Casey has not even seen this yet, and this is going to be so cool.
Wow. Drone technology.
4K, high definition drone flying in Dealey Plaza. That's cool.
That's right.
Yeah. That's very cool. So now you can see depth, you can see height. This thing is so good that the guy's flying it right here. He flew it right on top of the book depository. It's the color and contrast and the detail. You can see rocks on top of the building. It's so cool. So now we have a new way to see the shooting area that we've never seen before. Isn't that cool? It's just neat. And yes, you have to get a permit. Bill, I did check on that. The guy had to pay a $500 city user fee because there's no, supposedly the airspace is controlled because there's towers and cameras and all kinds of junk around, but he had to pay $500 to get this license, and it was only good for half a day. So he was flying it, he set it down after a half hour, recharged the battery, flying back up again. But isn't that, I mean, look at that. That is like you're flying, basically. So there's the book depository. There's the 6th floor. According to government, that's where Oswald shot all of his rounds from his rifle and fired and hit the president. 2 rounds, hitting with one of the shots hitting him in the head. And moving target inside a moving vehicle, moving away from you, 187 feet down with a 27-degree downward inclination. Impossible shot. I couldn't do it. I don't know anybody in the military or any kind of, you know, SEALs. They couldn't do it. But yet, oh, it almost was like vertigo. This is Elm Street. The president's car was in the middle lane when the shots were fired from back here. This is Main Street. The original motorcade route was supposed to go straight down Main Street and get out on the highway. At the last possible moment, a police officer standing at this corner put a barricade up, and they just followed the first car around just like a bunch of elephants in the circus. You had to go where the first car goes because you don't know where else they're going to go. Elm Street, Main Street, Commerce Street, triple overpass, grassy knoll area right here. Abraham Zaruder, whose film I'll show you in a little bit, was standing right there. This area is called the parking lot, the book depository. This is the railroad switching tower where there was a man in here at the time. You can see the back of the fence. And we're pulling back. This is the Daltex building. This is the county jail. The top 3 floors of that building are the jail, the holding cells. Witnesses are in there. Do you think the cops went up there, or the Secret Service or the FBI ever went up there and go, hey, did you guys happen to be looking out? You never went up there. That'd be the first place I'd go. I don't chase witnesses. Triple overpass. There was 18 to 20 guys standing in this area right here watching the car come right at them. Right underneath them. They shouldn't have been up there in the first place. But they were up there. This is the old court. This is the sheriff's department and the county record or county court building. The sheriff's department guys were told not to participate in any way, shape, or form with the motorcade security. That's the city boys thing. So they were standing out on the sidewalk when the car came down the street. Then they heard the shots, and then they ran to the grassy knoll area. They didn't go to the book depository. They went to the fence and the railroad yard. That's where all the shots were coming from. And this is the old county, the old courthouse. We call it the God spot because it could see. Casey and I were up there 5 to 10 years ago. You could see a panoramic. It's like you're on the 50-yard line. You can tell people, okay, your guy with the rifle isn't in the right place, moving around a little bit. But, so you get the idea. I mean, the technology that we have nowadays is you can do this. It's never been seen like this before. I'm going to stop it just for a quick question here to you all to see if you've got your thinking caps on. You are Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin. You come to work with a bolt-action rifle that you paid $19.95 for. It shoots World War II surplus ammunition that hasn't been manufactured since 1942. You get into the 6th floor, you put the rifle together. Why you would take it apart, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But now you're going to wait for the President of the United States to come down the road. So you're on the 6th floor, which is 2 floors down from the room. And the car that you're going to shoot at is making a turn and coming right to you. When would you shoot? Right then, absolutely.
This corner right here, 2 stores down.
Why would you not shoot there? Why would you wait until the car makes this illegal against, when I say illegal, I'm talking about against protocol for the Secret Service, making this 120-degree hairpin turn and go away from you and wait till it gets almost out of your sight before you fire your first round? This guy's the world's stupidest criminal. He didn't have very good training, I can tell you that. But to have 3 shots, 2 of them were hits, one of them's a headshot, in 5.5 seconds with a bolt-action rifle that doesn't fire World War II, would only fire World War II ammunition. It's impossible. And it's ludicrous to think that we would believe that. I didn't believe it. My dad didn't believe it. Nobody that has an intelligence in their brain goes, that doesn't make, why the hell would he do that?
Are you going to tell about Hoover?
No.
Well, let me just intersect here. Let me say, J. Edgar Hoover was asked how come Oswald didn't shoot at this point.
That's right.
And he go, well, he didn't shoot at this point. Of course, we don't have pictures at that time. Okay? The reason he didn't shoot as he's coming down Houston Street is because there's a tree in the way.
Yeah, there's a tree in the way. Tree blocked his
You guys see
view.
a tree?
Really?
There's a tree in the way. And of course, we don't have the pictures back in 1963, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, and 75. Not until the Zapruder film comes out in 75 do we actually get to see. It's like, where the hell's the tree?
The tree goes in Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the picture, is from a man named Weaver, and he's standing on the corner, and the car turns the corner and goes right towards the book depository. He takes a picture, and they said Hoover said that's where the tree was. So anyway, so we've come a long way with technology, and this is what we had before. And so let me lay it out for you. Main Street, the original route was supposed to go down Main Street. They made the turn onto Houston Street, made this 120-degree turn. The driver of the car that President Kennedy was riding in had never been to Dallas, or hadn't been to Dallas since 1932. He drove Franklin Roosevelt. He drove President Roosevelt through the streets of Dallas because at the time, the Works Progress Administration built this area to get America's economy moving again, right? So Greer, when he makes the turn, there's an annex road right here, as you can see. He almost turned into that street and had to jerk the wheel back and straighten out and get back in the line. The guy didn't even know where the hell they're going. They did not know, by their own testimony, where the closest trauma hospital was. If something should happen, God forbid, if something should happen to President Kennedy while they're driving from Love Field to the Trade Mart and back, where's the hospital? I don't know, we'll just follow across. They should know that.
Ryan, you got 55 minutes.
No way. Right. So there's the book depository. Down the street, boom, by the time it gets right here, it's over with. Here's the motorcade coming, looking up. I don't know what the hell they're looking up at, but there's people hanging out of windows. This is the picture that Hoover said there's a tree blocking his view. Okay, so I still don't see the tree. and we're on Houston Street. We're going to make the turn. We're about 25, 30 seconds from the shots. There's the window. This is the street light. Don't freak out about that. But look at everybody's off the street here. Before, they were, hey, how's it going? So this is probably the last picture taken before the president came under fire. And let me show you what you're looking at. Motorcycle officers, follow-up car, Secret Service agents. George Hickey, he comes into the story in just a minute. Motorcycle officer on this side. People on the side. President's car. There's the president. There's your target. There's Mrs. Connolly, or Mrs. Kennedy, Mrs. Connolly. There's a guy here. There's a highway sign. Abraham Zapruder is right up here on an elevated position. And there's people down here. So the car's coming down towards the overpass. Shots were fired. This is from Charles Bronson's picture, not the actor. Charles Bronson was it? No. There's people have your different names too. So he's taking the picture from looking from Main Street and looking across to Elm Street. He said when he took this picture, something startled him and he took the picture. And when he did, you can see the jiggle, you know, like, whoa, what was that? And all these people are going to see if they can see the president. And there's a guy out here in the street, in the curb, with his arm raised up. And behind him on the sidewalk is a guy with an umbrella that's open over his head. It's not raining. It's 64 degrees. Slight breeze out of the north at 2 to 5 miles an hour. And this guy's got an umbrella. Really? Why did you have an umbrella?
Well, I was protesting the president's father's control over Europe.
Talking what? I don't know that. This is crazy. So here's witnesses. This lady's been identified. This lady's been identified. This is Charles Brem. We talked to him before he passed away. He's with his son Joey, Gene Hill, Mary Mormon, Bill Newman, Dale Newman, Clayton, and Billy Jr. And we don't know who these people are. Abraham Zapruder, President's car, and we move on. The President's car is under fire right now. James Alkins, a UPI photographer, stood out into the curb, took this picture, the sound of a shot, and you can see this officer's looking, well, remember, he's right in the back. You can't, I don't know where, you can't tell where he's looking at, but he's looking this direction. These knuckleheads are looking this direction. These guys are looking this direction. These guys are looking here. The door on this car that President Johnson, or Vice President Johnson drives in, is open. People are on the balcony, they're outside the windows, they're on the fire escape. I mean, it's crazy. There are people going on all over the place. I want to show you one time, as if you were a witness. Glasses on. This is the Abraham Zapruder film.
And as Brian gets that set up, yeah, here we go. Yeah.
It's in high definition. This is not the way the original film looked, but the action is the same. Headshot. Clint Hill is jumping on the back of the car, and the car speeds off to Parkland Hospital.
Now, as Brian and I were doing this in our classes, we do know that some of our students had already seen the film. So what we proposed to them is that we're going to show it to you one time, and we would ask them questions. Number one, how many shots were fired? How many shots did you hear? Well, I swear to God, we had students say, well, I heard 3 shots. Really? There's no sound on this. But you heard 3 shots. That's really good. Okay? But you know what? That's kind of like the eyewitnesses down in Dallas, too. Dallas witnesses heard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when you ask the witnesses, they heard from 1 to 10. Except for our eyewitness didn't hear a thing because he can't hear.
And one witness, God love him, said he heard 1 more shot than was fired. That's what he said.
Well, I'll tell you what, you ought to sit down trying to go over the documentation on that. And I go, did you see this? Give me an explanation for this. What does this mean?
The Warren Commission was put together by President Johnson to control the fear, as it were, of the American public, because they did not want the American public to think that we're some banana republic where people in the inner circles of the presidency or the government were involved in this case. So President Johnson commissioned these politicians. I say that again. Politicians, they're not criminal investigators, they're not medical, they're not forensic scientists, they are politicians who are handpicked to come up with the government's version of the lone assassin. The volumes that they produced in 9 months, plus the producing of the books took 9 months, and they stack up this tall, and in 1964, when they came out, you could buy a set of 26 volumes for $76 and some change at your local post office. God, I wish I'd done that, because now they're almost $4,000. But I've read them. You can go online, historymatters.com, and you can start reading the testimony. The first 16 volumes deal with the testimony of the people that they called. And if you want to read something funny, don't read the funny papers. Don't go to a funny movie. Don't go to an Adam Sandler movie. Sit down and read the comments or read the testimony of some of these questions that these people asked. Some of the most ridiculous questions. The Secret Service agent that was driving the car was asked, "Where do you think the shots come from?" And he thought, my God, they've asked a direct question. And he said, well, to be honest with you, I have to tell you off the record because it just sounds a little weird if I told you where I think they came from. No, go ahead and tell us. Well, they came from the front, and I was driving right into the line of fire. They stopped his testimony and asked him about the budget for the Secret Service in 1962. How in the hell would he know that? He's an agent that drives the car. They didn't want to know what the guy saw. They were like that all the way through. So anyway, so we're going to the hospital, and this is the driver I just talked about, who said that he was coming from the front. He says, I never passed the lead car. They escorted us to the hospital. That's the lead car. That's your car. And you left him in DV Plaza because you hauled butt to get to the hospital. Even though you didn't know where you're going, you knew how to get there. This is an important photograph because it shows three things. It shows Dealey Plaza, there's the book depository, it shows the triple overpass, here are the president's car, the follow-up car, and these three guys. These three guys had no idea what had happened behind them. They're riding big Harleys, and now their motorcade is about ready to run up their ass because they're going so slow thinking they're still in the parade mode. Well, they're in for a rude awakening in about 10 seconds because it's going to get like crazy. Dan Rather, good old Danny, says that he was in this group of men. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a kid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, 8 people. 2 of them are African American. Dan Rather said on television he was standing right there and he was waiting for the film to be thrown to him from the press car. And when he saw the president run by, or drive by, he knew something was wrong. And he ran in a suit with street shoes, ran back to the CBS affiliate, WFAA, and got on the air and said, "Oh my God, President Kennedy's been shot." Well, that's some good damn reporting, Danny. He went from a local nothing news reporter to the CBS anchor desk 4 years later when Walter Cronkite retired. Or whenever Cronkite retired, Danny Rather stepped in. But one more thing I want to show you this. You can all read what that billboard says.
What does it say?
Charter. That's a whiskey. Old Charter. It was there on the day of the assassination.
How tall is it, do you think? I mean, if you were to...
It's exactly the same height as the top of the overpass.
Okay?
20 feet. 20 feet, 8 inches.
Yeah.
Not that I measured it, but we did.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask you that question again when we come to Ed's story. Old Charter. Clint Hill is riding on the back of the car at 80, 90 miles an hour. Whoa, $2,000 a year. I'm not going to get killed for that. He is is riding on the back of the car because of the Dealey Plaza shooting. He jumps up on the car. Of course, the guys that are protecting the president go, "Whoa, what?" He's riding on the car. He sees the president's brains all over the seat, and he's hanging on for dear life. Everybody else is just hunkered down in the car. There's my man. Not the brightest cookie ever came out of the box, but there he is in the car. He's riding on the back of the car. He is on the back of the car from the time they left Dealey Plaza until they got to the Parkland Hospital 5 miles away. He never got off. There was no place to get off. He's on top of the car. There's no place to get in the car because Kennedy's laying across the seat. Mrs. Kennedy is laying over the top of him. The Conley's on the front 2 jump seats. He's got no place to go. That's his seat. There he is. Henry Ford Museum, there's the fake car, back of the neck, or back of the head. There's Ken Quinlan going, "Mr. Hill, you're an idiot. Why did you say that on C-SPAN it came off the front of his head?"
We'll just get online.
So there's me, there's Casey. We didn't meet him, he's upright. Hospital. Show up at the hospital, there's the follow-up car, the limousine is inside here. That is a crime scene. Everybody is around that car. That's a crime scene. Surgical staff called staff. Let's see room 1. What's going on? This little crowded room had 20, 25 people in it, plus Secret Service, plus the president, and they're trying to save his life. He has an entrance hole right here, an exploded back hole in the back of his head, and he was dead. Pretty much from the time he got to the hospital, he was already dead.
Do any of you know where that trauma room number 1 is right now? Well, we preserved it, but we have no place for it in the National Archives. So they moved it to Lenexa, Kansas.
In an underground storage.
Yeah.
Department of Interior.
But you can't see
You
it.
cannot see it.
You
It's
can't
set up.
see
It is
It's
set up.
set up,
You can't see it.
but you can't see it. It would take,
Where is it? It's at the I can get you it's the underground.
is it inland? I don't know if it's inland. I'm
It's
not
right
sure.
off of 95th and Prairie.
It's what now?
Veritex,
That's it.
Meritex,
That's
that's.
Yeah.
where it is.
Yeah.
95th and Plum.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't see it.
I even had Dr. McClellan write a letter to the Department of Interior. Why the Department of Interior has the property, I don't know. But he wrote as a doctor who was there, put his hands on the man, said, "I would like to see that." No. What the hell are they hiding it from? Anyway, it's just like that. So anyway, so back outside, back up, don't take a picture. That's a bucket that was brought out, and they're scrubbing the car out. That's a Secret Service agent. He's putting the top on the car so nobody can look at the ghoulish back seat.
It's a crime scene, guys, and they're cleaning it up.
They're cleaning the thing up, which is wrong. And that's what it looks like now when they drove it away. So then they drove this. 2 agents drove that car to the airport, to Love Field. Sorry, stuck it on a plane and flew it back to Washington. Secret Service agents called for an ambulance and a hearse, an ambulance, O'Neill ambulance, and a casket. A bronze $7,000 Britannia mahogany casket. This is like an ornate piece of furniture that you would see at a funeral home for a visitation. It's a big, heavy piece of wood. And now we're going to put a 200-pound dead person in it, and we're going to take it away from Dallas before they can do an autopsy. So they load it up, and Casey and I have talked to, his name is Aubrey Wright. He's an ambulance attendant who drove the ambulance, who now is helping put the president's body inside the ambulance. And they drive away, and they end up at Love Field, and they take the casket, and they lift it, and they take it up onto Air Force One. And Lyndon Johnson is sworn in as the new president. First time the oath was administered by a woman, and the first time it was administered on an airplane. Just after President Johnson lowers his hand and he says, "Let's get in the air," he turns around to Senator Ralph Thomas and gives him a little winky wink. You read whatever you want into that. I read, of course, conspiratorial. there's something wrong. I don't think Johnson was involved. I think he knew what was going to happen. I didn't think he knows it was going to be like this. But he certainly was a party after the fact when he basically destroyed the whole theory of one guy doing it. He said, yeah, that's the guy that we want, and we'll move on. At 1:35, while they're at the airport, still waiting, how much? You can speak out.
You got a 5-minute break coming up.
Yeah. They make an arrest. They get a call from somebody at the theater in Oak Cliff, which is about 5 miles away from downtown Dallas. And a police officer had been shot and killed about 3 blocks from this location. And 45 cops show up at this theater because the lady named Julia Postal, a ticket taker, it's the middle of the day on Friday. The only people there is kids skipping school and old people are watching the movie Cry of Battle War is held with Van Heflin in it. And I have to share this with you because it's just so ludicrous and so stupid that it's funny. So imagine the scene downtown Dallas, people running all over the place. President's been shot, my God, who do we look for? What building did we cover? Who's the bad guy? Who's the witness? And did you see? And we get all these people. And now 5 miles away at 1:20, we get a call from a citizen who said, hey, there's a cop's been shot out here. I think he's dead. The hell with the president. All the cops went out to Oak Cliff, 4 miles away. Well, the hell with the president. We don't care. One of our own guys got killed. So they get there, and they're looking all over the place, and they're going like a bunch of Keystone cops going 12 different directions. They get a phone call. The police dispatcher gets a phone call from a lady named Julia Postal. She's the ticket taker in this theater. And she says, I know you guys are busy. I've been listening to the radio, but you might want to come out to Texas Theater. There's a guy in here, it looks like he might be running from you. The question was then asked, what makes you think he was running from us? Well, call it women's intuition. Holy crap. 45 cops show up. They drop what they're doing, and they show up at the theater. Half of them go in the front, half of them go in the back, and they converge on this guy, and they beat the crap out of him, and drag him out. And they throw him in the police car. That's him right there. That's their suspect. What's your name, buddy? You figure it out. I ain't telling you squat. I didn't do nothing. You ever seen that in color?
Pretty good.
Yeah. This guy's a detective with the homicide department. He's a player. So they arrest this guy and they say he's the guy that did it, and they bring him, drag him back and forth through the hallway, and reporters are all going, did you shoot the president? I didn't shoot anybody. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. These people brought me in because I lived in Russia. Yeah, I carried a pistol. Hey, I'm a guy. I can carry a pistol. At one point, when he's being dragged down the hallway and back and forth to interrogation, he says, I'm just a patsy. Boom. There is your first clue that something's wrong. He wasn't supposed to be alive. And now they got to change tactics. Did you hear what something said? We got to get rid of him before he tells the whole story. I think he was involved in something. I sure as hell don't. I know he didn't shoot anybody. But what's interesting is he's in custody for 2.5 days, Friday to Sunday. Murder suspect of a cop. Attempted murder on the governor of the state of Texas and the murder of President Kennedy. Do you know that they didn't write down anything he said? He was interrogated for 12 hours. Nobody ever wrote anything down on what he said. Are you kidding me? How did you get to be a cop? This is the most important prisoner you ever had in your life, and you're going to interrogate him and you don't write anything down? Right across the hallway is an interrogation room with a reel-to-reel recorder with a microphone on a table. Bring the guy in and talk to him and tell him, tell us your story there, Skippy. They didn't do that. I asked, can I show you? Oh yeah, here we go. Well, it didn't matter what he said. He ain't going to live anyway. So on Sunday morning, 11:20, they bring him out on live television. This is our first chance to see this guy. There he is. I've interviewed this guy about 3 times. Right. Detective Lavelle, in front of how many people? Probably 300 people at our conference. And he made the mistake of showing up. Dumb idea. So we had a chance to, he was on a panel, and we had a chance to go up and talk, ask a question, and then you move on. Well, Brian was the last one to ask a question.
That's what I said.
He probably regrets coming. Because I stood there and I looked at him and I said, Detective Lavelle, thank you for showing up. And we really appreciate your personal history. I know it was a hectic weekend. As a police officer, I need to know, did you work any other homicide cases that year? Well, yeah, we had 40 or 50. Did you take notes? Well, standard operating procedure. Did you take notes when you talked to Oswald? The moderator goes, you've asked your question, sir. So I walked back through the line of people. Casey grabs me by the arm and says, get back up there. This son of a bitch didn't answer your question. So I made a U-turn, and I stood back in the line, and he looked at me, and we looked at each other, and he went, oh, shit. I said, Detective Lavelle, you just got to, for those who are not law enforcement, explain to us why you didn't take any notes of what he said. And he says, I swear to God, he said this. It didn't matter what he said. It wasn't going to change the course of the investigation at that point. Didn't he say that? Yeah. I went, I'm coming, Martha. What? How do you know? Everything he says is important. But it didn't matter. So they bring him out, the perp walk, as they say. I saw Jack coming, Jack Ruby. I saw Jack coming through the crowd, but I didn't have time to react. You had your coat buttoned up. You couldn't get to your gun if you tore your jacket off. And why would you transfer him with everybody there? When you do that at night, I'm going to end it right there because that's where our story ends. He's dead, case closed, move on. Take 5 minutes. November 22nd, 1963, Ed Virgil Hoffman. The topic of our book, Beyond the Fence Line, was working at Texas Instruments in North Texas, North Dallas. And as his habit was, he broke a tooth while he was chewing on some ice. Broke a molar. His boss said, well, you better go get that taken care of. So Ed left Texas Instruments and was on his way to Grand Prairie, where his dentist was. He was driving through past Dealey Plaza and goes, oh, Kennedy's coming. Now I'll look for a spot. I'm hooky, playing hooky from a job. So he drives into Dealey Plaza, off the interstate. This is Highway I-35. Off the interstate and drives all the way through Dealey Plaza, and the cops weren't letting anybody park there. So they basically, Ed just followed the line of the cars, or the motorcade where it would have been going later, and came out on the highway. Book Depository, Main Street, Elm Street, overpass, highway, Stemmons Freeway, I-35. Ed came through, underneath, went past, and saw cars parked. This is 1963, not this picture, but 1963. There's a breakdown lane. There's 4 lanes of highway. Wide breakdown lane. Ed saw cars parked and people standing out with placards, and so he stopped and parked, just like everybody else did. He went underneath this underpass and parked in this area on the shoulder of the road. This is the overpass. This is not the triple overpass. This is a different place. This is the triple overpass where the president's car passed underneath. This is the railroad overpass, or a trestle, where Ed went underneath and parked out here and walked back and stood on the ground level and couldn't see anything, but decided before the president's car came out, he would go back up on the highway and plant his butt on the side of the road. Remember, the man is deaf. He can't hear the cars going by at 60 miles an hour, and it doesn't matter if they are, because he's got a big white shoulder to stand on. So, when Ed parked his car on the other side of the overpass and walked back, he said there was a police officer, a uniformed police officer on top of that overpass. And if the guy was yelling at him, the officer was yelling at him, he couldn't hear it anyway. So Ed continued on, and he found a spot. He walked back. This is looking back to the south. Or, yes. walking back along here. This is the entrance ramp. This is looking north. This is looking south on the same ramp. And Ed stood here originally. Wasn't going to be able to see anything until the car went by. So he went back up on top and stood here. This is at the same level as the parking lot. There's Ed. So Ed tells his story to Nigel Turner, the producer of this British series.
Prime witness, Ed Hoffman, a deaf-mute who is interviewed here for the first time.
I'd gotten off work early because I had a dentist appointment. I was traveling down the freeway here, and I remembered that President Kennedy was coming to visit Dallas. I parked my car here. I realized at this spot that I would be able to see Kennedy pass close by. I stood here and waited, and I was looking towards where he would be coming from. I suddenly saw two men who looked suspicious directly over there in the car park.
25 years ago, these trees did not obscure the view. From his position at the side of the freeway, Ed Hoffman could clearly see the car park area behind the grassy knoll.
I saw a man standing
the
here
fence.
wearing a black hat and a blue jacket. I saw a puff of smoke and I thought it was a cigarette, but it wasn't. He had a gun and he walked towards the railroad. He tossed the gun to the second man. Then he turned and straightened his jacket, adjusted his hat, and walked casually away. The man with the striped shirt, the railroad shirt, walked over to the electrical box with the gun. He took the gun apart. He put it in a toolbox. He then walked slowly away in the
This is
direction
rapid.
of the railroad.
The interpreter got that wrong.
Didn't walk slowly, he rapidly.
When the motorcade passed by below me here, I realized that Kennedy had been shot. I was horrified. I saw a policeman standing on the railroad bridge, and I tried to get his attention, but he didn't see me. So I got in my car and drove to the area where I had seen the two men. There were so many people there, and I couldn't find them. I went to the FBI to tell them what I had seen. They didn't want me to say anything. They offered me money to keep quiet. They didn't understand that it was more important for me to tell them what I had seen. It was hard for me to communicate with them. I do feel that the two men I saw were working together, and that the one with the gun behind the fence was the man who shot President Kennedy.
The switch boxes that Ed was talking about, this is the railroad switching tower. There was a man inside that, 15 feet off the ground, booked depository, and this man in this building could see all this parking lot and the fence and the activity behind the fence.
He's 98 yards away from the back of the picket fence.
This was the only view we had of it behind, or from the railroad tower until I snuck in, well, I didn't sneak in, I was let in. 3 or 4 years ago, I got inside the railroad tower and took these pictures. This is the first time that I've known of anybody ever getting up there to take pictures. But that's where Ed saw the activity. Back in '63, the day of the assassination, there was no lines. It was a gravel parking lot, and there was cars parked everywhere. I mean, on top of each other. I mean, they were crisscrossing. And so Ed said that he saw activity from his position of the yellow dot. He could see clearly all this area around here. He said there was men with a suit and a fedora hat walking back and forth along the fence like he was a lion in a cage, just back and forth, back and forth. And he said the other man stood by this railroad switch box. Let me get to the picture here. This is from the movie JFK. Ed's story was used in the movie, but then they clipped it out and it ended up on the floor. All right, so here's the switch boxes. So at the time of the assassination, there was an 8-inch steam pipe that was bolted to this part of the bridge. This is the overpass. So if I'm standing on top of the overpass, I can look down onto the cars that come underneath me on Elm Street. These railroad switch boxes were there. This is the one where Ed said the man stood by. This was the taller of the three. There's an aerial view of it. There's the first one, second one, and the third one. There's a steam pipe right there. Ed said when the man with the gun ran down the fence line, he stopped suddenly and tossed the rifle to the man who had come up to the pipe, and he caught it. Ed said he had never been to the back of the Dealey Plaza, he'd never been to the back of the book depository, he never knew there was a pipe there. All he could say was the man was running, stopped suddenly, tossed it, turned around and walked back. So, well, when you do research, you got to do research. You got to figure out how tall. Could somebody have stood back there? Well, yeah. And remember, people are watching the car. They're not watching some guy standing by an electrical switch box. So, switchbox Quinlan is number 2. They removed it a long time ago, and only the pedestal remains of the first one. So, this one is this one, this one is this one, and this one is long gone. So these boxes were manual railroad things. You open them up, pull this lever down, you can manually track or switch trains on a car. There's the steam pipe. We know the steam pipe was there. We have video of it. Ed said that the man turned and walked back to the parking lot where he had come from, and a police officer confronted this guy at gunpoint. Mark Lane's rush to judgment, you can see the pipe, it was there. There's no doubt that Ed saw something because the guy stopped. And it was like that tall off the ground, you couldn't go on, you had to go underneath of it. Unless you hurdled it, you had to go around it or underneath it. Just like Mr. Hollings doing. The pipe was there, no doubt about it. So obviously I have no time in my world I can make animation, but this is what Ed saw these guys do. And then the man caught the rifle, put it in a bag, and for years and years and years people said, well, we can't take a rifle apart. Yes, you can. They made them in World War I, in fact. All these people were on top. There was 18 to 20 guys. The railroad workers were on top of the overpass watching the car come underneath. The guy in the blue is a police officer. There was a police officer stationed up on top of that railroad overpass to keep people who are not supposed to be up there off. Well then, what about all these people in front of you there, bud? Well, they're okay, they're railroad workers. Well, so they're okay. Really? Okay. So, all the men on the overpass said that they saw smoke coming from the trees to their left in that direction towards the book depository. A police officer came around the parking lot and confronted the man who had tossed the rifle to the other guy. And the officer put his gun out and says, you know, who the hell are you? Ed couldn't hear this, but he sees the man, confront the man with the gun. The officer pulls his pistol out and confronts the man who tossed the rifle. The officer said in his testimony, the man reached in his coat, showed us Secret Service credentials, and then I let him go. Did you get his name? No. Really? There's no Secret Service agents on the ground. They're all at Parkland Hospital. So whoever that guy was an imposter. So here's the motorcade coming. This is a close-up of that first picture I showed you. There is an AR-15 rifle in the back of that was in the car, the follow-up car, that Agent George Hickey removed from the little padded locker in the car, and he locked and loaded. He's ready to shoot. It's over with, dude. You missed it. But he wrote a report, and the other 5 agents in the car said, Agent Hickey removed the AR-15, locked and loaded around in the chamber, and we rode to Dallas Parkland Hospital. We know that rifle was in the car. Just reminding you, that's old charter, right? It's still old charter in this picture. Didn't change. So Hickey says, yeah, I was ready to go. And these poor guys are hanging on for dear life at 90 miles an hour, going the highway, trying to catch up to the motor, trying to catch up to President Kennedy.
Hold that right there, Brian. Pull that back up real quick. The only vegetation that was in there that day was this tree. It's about a 14-foot tree, okay? And that's it.
That's it.
Ed can see right directly.
It's not even in his line of sight. If Ed's looking at the back of the book depository, that bush is over here. There's the rifle, tip of the barrel, right there. We know that rifle was in the car. Motorcade speeds off. There's the motorcade on Stevens Freeway. All these cars were parked out here waiting for the president to go by. That's what Ed saw, and that's the reason Ed stopped like everybody else. There's the motorcade coming up, and it is apart, basically. It's all split up now. Agent Hill's on the back of the president's car. Here's the AR-15. That is an AR-15. Fully automatic, 223 Remington AR-15. Bound for Vietnam. Thank David Knight for this. Filmed this. This was done 2 years ago in Dealey Plaza. A friend of ours owns the Lincoln, not the stretch limo version, but he gives tours with that car. And David filmed, that's Ed's viewpoint. Ed said the back of the head was gone. He could look down in the car and see the back of the head was gone. Dr. McClellan drew that for the Warren Commission. The doctor who was there, who had touched his body, said that's what it looked like. You're wrong. Okay. I'm just telling you what I saw. All those people are wrong. They conspired together to say the back of the head looked like that. Okay, really? Why would you do that? Everybody there saw. Eyewitness, ambulance driver, doctor, head nurse. They all lied. Right? They had to have. Of course they didn't. There's a generated computer version of what it looked like. I could show you a lot more graphic pictures, but we're not going to do that. There's Ed. Now, people had said over the years, the reason we wrote the book is because we were pissed off. Well, all these people who Ed Hoffman couldn't have seen what he saw because he kept changing the story. Really? Well, let's find out. How did Ed know? Ed's the green dot. Will always be the green dot. How did Ed know there was a police officer on top of the railroad overpass? How did he know that? You do research, you have to find out what he saw, and you go, well, there's the city of Dallas, these are the motorcade, these are the guys assigned to that, and on that day, Officer Brown and Officer Lomax were on top of the Topeka and Frisco overpass across the stream. There was 2 officers there. Ed saw that. How would he know? Ed didn't read this. He didn't have access to that. How did he know that? He had to have been there. How did Ed know there was a uniformed police officer on the overpass, on the triple overpass? Remember, there's the book depository, there's Elm Street, this is the triple overpass. The overpass we just talked about was here. This is what Ed could see there. This is the same level as this and the same level as Ed. How did Ed know that? Looked at that same document. Officer Foster and Officer White on top of the overpass, railroad overpass at Elm. How did Ed know that? He had to have been there. There's a picture of him. That's Foster. There's all the people on the overpass. The car goes right underneath of him. Officer Foster is not that tall. He is standing on a box, a railroad box. It's a metal box, a switch box. He's standing on that so he could see over the top of the guys in front of him. And said that the police officer he saw from the back was taller than everybody else. Now, how in the hell would Ed know that? Did he divine that and go, I'm going to say there was a cop, he was really tall, and he was wearing a white hat. Yeah, that'll sound good. I don't think so. How did he know there was anybody on the triple overpass? Well, there's pictures of him. Ed saw that from on the other side. How did Ed know about any smoke on the fence line? Did he just oh, I'm going to say there's smoke. Everybody on the overpass saw smoke right over here in the same spot that Ed Hoffman did. Did Ed make that up? Or did he call these guys and go, hey, I know I can't hear you, but tell me what you saw? How would he do that? Sam Holland was the railroad supervisor. He wrote an affidavit. He says, I heard what I thought was the moment from the moment was a firecracker, and he slumped. The president slumped over. I looked over towards the arcade and saw a puff of smoke come out from the trees, and I heard 3 more shots. I immediately ran around to where I could see behind the arcade. I definitely saw, or definitely came, the smoke, the puff of smoke I saw definitely came from behind the arcade. Did he make that up? They lied on an affidavit? I doubt it. Can't be done. All those people lied. Sure they did. How did Ed know any of those people? Ed saw the same thing everybody else did. As a police officer, if I talk to this lady and this man and this lady and they say, yeah, I saw smoke, okay, maybe you did. But if I talk to all these other people and they say the same thing, maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe they're all seeing the same thing. I don't know, you don't have to be a genius to figure out, well, maybe they're all wrong, but I doubt it. There's a picture of smoke, there's the limousine. Ralph Yarborough, the senator of Texas, was driving through the motorcade, and he said, I can smell gunpowder at street level. Explain to me how smoke and gunpowder would get from 60 feet up in the air behind the car and drift out into the street at street level so that people could smell it. You can't. The smell of gunpowder was so strong you could smell it all the way back from where we were. One more picture. The shot came from right behind this man and this woman who we've talked to many, many times. They're friends of ours. Well, not friends, but we know who they are. They know who we are. At the time of the assassination, the president's car is under fire. They're standing right here. Shot came right over their shoulder. They threw themselves down on the ground to protect their kids. When the press people saw them fall on the ground, thought they'd been shot, they went over and took pictures of them. Thought, oh, hell, you're not shot. Where's the shooters coming from? Mr. Newman and Mrs. Newman with their son Billy and Clayton go on television 25 minutes after the shots, and the reporter goes, tell us what you saw, Billy. His name's William. Billy, well, we were standing there, and wife and I were watching. We waved at the president, and the shot hit him in the head, blew off his ear, and the shot came right behind us, and we threw ourselves down on the ground. And the reporter goes, do you mean the shots from the book depository? No, sir. No, sir, right behind us. Bill Newman turns in his chair and goes, no, it's right behind us on the fence. Look at YouTube. It's on there. So did he lie? I don't know. One more shot, and I got to tell you, I got to quit. I have to get to this.
You gotta get that.
All right. This moron, this gentleman, wrote a book called Case Closed. Don't buy it, well, unless you need a paperweight for your door during the summer. It's great for that. Just wedge that sumbitch underneath the door. Anyway, I had to buy it because I wanted to read what he wrote. Okay, it's in the fantasy section with Snow White and the Warren Commission. So he writes, he just looks like that Ken doll guy. Anyway, so there's the book. So, New York Times bestseller, given a $2 million advance, is a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in History. He's regurgitating the government's version, and he gets a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize for History. Thank God he did not win it. Thank you very much. The movie rights were purchased for $4 million. He was an author. It's featured on every frickin' magazine and every television show. He is now a terrorism expert. He's a frickin' Wall Street lawyer that got disbarred, okay? But he's writing this book. All right, so Newsweek critic guy says this book really does close the case. There can now be no doubt that Lee Oswald alone killed President Kennedy. Mr. Poser's reporting meets the highest standards of great achievement in contemporary journalism. At last, a voice of sanity. After 30 years, finally succeeds. Poser resolves the greatest murder mystery of all time. What? 2010, he gets charged with plagiarism by a book, by a publisher. He copied the entire book and made it his own. Total pages, 506, 1,400 of them are footnoted, 60 authors, every author he used as a source was a supporter of the lone assassin theory. Well, of course his story is going to come out as a lone assassin, that's all your sources are. The reporting meets the highest standards. On page 257 of his book, he says, Hoffman said he was on the Stemmons Freeway some 250 to 300 yards west.
190 yards.
We measured it. It isn't 250, well, yeah, that's wrong. It's 190 yards. So that's wrong. So then, again, Old Charter, still with me? Okay. There's a color picture of Old Charter. And there's Old Charter again on the day of the assassination, and there's anything. So, in his book, Posner says, Ed could not have seen what he saw because, what did he call it? Seagrams. What? No, Cutty Sark. Billboard was in the way. He can't even read the sign. So there's a picture of Ed and Rosie, and Ed passed away. And I finished with this. Remember, Ed and Rosie, his wife, are both deaf. There's Ed behind the fence. He passed away in 2010. But they look at the day they got married. It was their anniversary. And they were going to go out. And so they decided to go out, and then they came back and watched television. And of course, there was no closed caption back then. And so Ed and Rosie, all they could do was watch the TV and the pictures. And Ed said, he told us through his daughter, Mary, who interpreted for us, she said every time Dad would watch TV and every time they'd show Oswald, he'd get up and just storm around. She said, Dad, what's the matter? That's not the guy I saw. And then they show the building. That's not the building. It may have been involved, but that's not what he saw. So there's Ed, and we, Casey and I converted into a KU Jayhawk, and so, and he got the first copy of the book, made him so happy, and we miss him.
All right. Thank you.
So, there we go.
Thank you.
Questions?
Guys, as usual, I mean, we've got to get out of here at 9 o'clock, but at the same time, I think most of you are realizing that the assassination of President Kennedy, you know, lasted probably less than 30 seconds, okay? Actually, it lasted less than 6 seconds. But there's thousands of books out there, and when you do research to try to figure out what actually took place, you start on at that level here, and then all of a sudden you're off on this tangent. And that takes 5 years. And as you keep going, you're saying, my God, I got to find an end to this. I think that's what my wife was saying on the 50th anniversary. Is it over?
No.
Oh, we're just not getting the documents. So we have a heck of a lot more. And what we're going to do, we're going to move, if you want to come, we're going to go over to
Your house?
Johnny's. We're going to go over to Johnny's. We'll have, you know, a few drinks or whatever you guys would like.
Coke.
And Coke, yeah. And then we don't have anything scheduled within the next 2 or 3 weeks, but there will be something by the end of March, and we will let you guys know. If you signed up with us and got an email, we will continue to do that. It amazes me that this is the first time we've been down at Dealey Plaza. You saw the Zapruder film for the very first time, at least in our class, but we could take up an entire week just going over the Zapruder film by itself, and who Zapruder is, where he was, why he was there, and then is the film the real film? No, it is not.
It's been altered.
It's been altered so many times, it's unbelievable. So in a court of law, this would never be allowed in a court of law.
99% of the evidence that was collected would not be admissible in a court of any land on any continent because it was tampered with, it was not, the chain of evidence was not maintained, and it was lost, destroyed, or altered.
Also, before you guys get out of here, if you picked up one of these, and I hope you did, I am teaching a course, and Brian will be part of that, and so will David. And I'm going to teach a course here starting Tuesday and Wednesday in April, goes all the way to May 29th. 2 days a week, from like 9:30 a.m. in the morning till 12 noon. And the course will cover a lot of the stuff that we've already covered, but it will also cover in depth all the stuff that we haven't covered. Okay? So if you really want to get involved in that, these are the courses that I put together through Brian that we taught at Washburn University, and we're going to present those here. And if we can get some eyewitnesses up here that are still alive, we'll try to do that. But we want to thank you guys for coming out. If not, pick up one of these, and if you want to go with us over to Johnny's, we'll meet you over there. Thank you guys. Question, yes?
I have one quick question. Like at the beginning of your presentation on the parade route, you showed all these pictures from all these different angles. How'd you get all those pictures to be able to kind of
Public domain, most of them.
public domain?
Yeah.
They were taken by,
Civilians, people who were,
okay,
after the assassination, the people that did take pictures or motion picture film, there was the chief of police went on television, and the Dallas Morning News put an article in the paper, if you took pictures of the motorcade at any point, please turn them into the local authorities because we need your help. People were standing in line going, God, whatever it helps. 70% of those people never got their pictures back.
To this day.
There's one lady who her dad took pictures, or took film, as the car was turning the corner, confiscated by the FBI. She's still trying to get that back. That was 54 years ago.
so it went to Dallas Police, and then the FBI took it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. With no authority and no rhyme or reason, they just took it. Well, I know why they took it, because Hoover was told to take it.
Yeah.
And that's why the body was taken.
So how did you get access to it? Because it's been released and all?
Access to what? I'm sorry.
I mean, the ones you showed of all the cars going along the
Oh,
route.
that's
How did you get all those?
public domain.
Okay.
Yeah, public domain on most of those.
The best thing to do, if you want to look at, I'm a picture guy, if you want to get on, let's just a Google website, just go on Google, and in the search bar, just type in, no spaces, no capital letters, November 22, 1963, hit enter, and then click on the images, you'll get tens of thousands of images. That's where we get a lot of our.
Okay.
And-
So the public have made them available.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They're copyrighted material by the person who took the picture, but after a certain time, the copyright is over with, and now they're out in public. But if you use a picture, you have to give credit where credit is due.
So if somebody gave their pictures to the police department,
Yeah.
never got them back. Those pictures haven't been.
Those are the ones we haven't seen.
Yeah, let's see.
We don't know what those are.
Okay.
Just a quick story about that. In the follow-up car, Dave Powers, the guy, have you seen the movie 13 Days? Okay. Kevin Costner's character plays Dave Powers, or Kenny O'Donnell, I'm sorry. Anyway, but in the follow-up car, remember I said there was two guys who weren't Secret Service agents? One of them had a motion picture camera. And it just so happened when they got to Dealey Plaza, he ran out of film. Well, wouldn't that have been great to see him behind?
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. You know, I told you that I'm doing research right now, trying to figure out who some of these people are that I've been trying to figure out for the past 30 years. I get a better version. They cleaned up the version of the film that was behind the presidential vehicle, Dave Powers' film. And it stops, but I want to go back and I want to see what's in the film. Because I said, I'm looking for a guy that jumps out to the car. Sure enough, there's a guy that jumps out to the car, leans over in the car. Have you ever seen this? No. Well, I have it, and I'm going to show you next time. But this guy gets into the car. He is wrestled down by the Secret Service. There are Secret Service personnel on the outside, and he disappears. He has disappeared on November 22nd, 1963. Has not been seen by his wife or his kids since that day, 54 years later.
Which car did he jump into, the follow-up car?
Well, he jumped right into the presidential vehicle, and he's yelling something at the president.
Oh, really?
Okay, we were told. Well, no, he's actually he's the head of the Secret Service division of the Dallas division, and he had just received a telex, and he goes, "Good God, they're going to kill him in Dallas." So he's right down the road, so he goes out and he says, "I've got to warn him right now." So we see this guy jump into the car, and all of a sudden he's tore down. Now, we believe that this is Secret Service Agent Robinson, and we believe that he had the telex, because we go back and we check the telex that he received. And it's interesting, the telex was from the field office of the New Orleans Secret Service that got information from somebody in Dallas saying that there was going to be a possible attempt on the life. And we think that that person who gave that communication to the New Orleans Secret Service was Lee Harvey Oswald. See, Oswald's not who you think he is.
He's probably an informant for O&I or.
Where exactly on the route did he jump into the car?
Probably
on
somewhere,
Main Street
either,
somewhere.
probably just before Main on Harwood Street. We think it's probably on Harwood because the Dallas Secret Service office is just off Harwood Street. And then you see Clint Hill on the back of the vehicle. Like Brian said, he was on the back of that vehicle 3 times.
And he never volunteered when he testified that, yeah, there was a guy jumped out in front of the car and we tackled him. That would be something to tell them. We didn't volunteer it, so it didn't happen.
Yeah. Guys, we got to get out of here. Thank you guys for coming. If you guys want to come over to Johnny's, come on over there. And I want to thank my former students for coming here, some of my classmates. Haven't seen you guys for years. Thank